The galaxy had always spoken of the Aurelians in hushed tones. They were not called an empire, nor a species. They were called gods. Their ships were carved from starlight and shadow, vessels that had drifted across millennia. Their voices were said to bend minds, their weapons to silence worlds. For 10,000 years, no civilization had resisted them and lived. Until now. The human colony of Elysium 9 had been a garden of steel and green, farms stretching under domed skies, families living in peace at the far edge of mapped space. And then, in a single night, the Aurelians descended. No declaration. No negotiation. Just silence and fire. When the rescue ships arrived, all they found was ash. The United Terran fleet convened in fury, and the debate raged for days: surrender to preserve the species, or resist the eternal gods? In the end, only one ship moved. The USS Valkyrie. Captain Jonathan Hayes stood on the command deck as the stars stretched into endless streaks. His uniform was crisp but worn, the weight of command pressing into his shoulders. He had seen war before, but this was different. Every officer on board knew it: they were sailing into a myth. ETA to Aurelian boundary, 3 minutes, Lieutenant Sarah Monroe reported from navigation, her voice steady but tight. She was young, brilliant, but her eyes betrayed the fear she tried to bury. Chief Engineer Daniel Reed, gray at the temples and gruff as iron, muttered from the lower console, 3 minutes until we piss off gods. Hell of a career move. Weapons Officer Marcus Kane cracked his knuckles beside the tactical display, his jaw clenched like stone. Gods or not, sir, they burn civilians alive. We're not here to bow. We're here to bleed them. Hayes didn't answer at first. He studied the void ahead, where the stars dimmed as if a great shadow had spread across space. The boundary of the Aurelian dominion was not marked by lines or satellites. It was felt. The closer they drew, the more the crew whispered of strange dreams, of voices just beyond hearing. The Dominion itself was alive with presence. He finally spoke, his voice low and certain. No one is immortal. Not forever. When they crossed the threshold, reality twisted. The stars bent. Space rippled like water disturbed. Suddenly, the Valkyrie was no longer alone. A ship emerged, vast, golden, shaped like a cathedral suspended in the void. Its surface glowed with living light, symbols shifting like flame across its hull. The crew fell into silence as the being spoke, not through comms, but directly into their minds. Kneel. Sarah flinched, hands shaking over her controls. Reed cursed under his breath, clutching his head as if the voice clawed through his skull. Kane spat blood, his nose bleeding. Hayes straightened. His voice cut through the bridge like steel. This is Captain Jonathan Hayes of the United Terran Fleet. We don't kneel. A ripple of laughter echoed in their skulls, cold and endless. Your kind was young when our empire conquered suns. You are nothing. You are dust. We will unmake you. The golden ship moved. Not with engines, but as if reality itself bent to its will. Energy surged from its spires, a storm of plasma and lightning that swallowed the Valkyrie. Shields at 70%. Kane shouted, bracing against the impact. The ship rattled violently, warning sirens filling the bridge. Stabilize us. Hayes barked. Sarah's fingers flew across her console, teeth gritted. Gravity well, they're dragging us into a collapse. Reed's voice roared from engineering over comms, hull stress rising. If they keep pulling, we'll fold like paper. The Aurelians weren't just attacking. They were toying. Demonstrating inevitability. The weight of their so-called divinity pressed against human will. The crew felt it, despair gnawing at the edges, the belief that nothing could stand against such timeless power. Hayes saw it in their faces: fear, resignation. The gods wanted them to surrender without resistance. He slammed his fist on the console. Not today. Sarah, burn the engines. Marcus, ready the coil cannons. Reed, reroute power from life support if you have to. We don't stop. Kane's eyes burned. With pleasure, sir. The Valkyrie screamed through the void, engine straining against the invisible chains. The Aurelian's voice boomed again. Mortals! You fight against eternity itself. Surrender, and your deaths will be swift. Hayes leaned forward, speaking not as a soldier, but as a man who carried the weight of every fallen colonist on Elysium 9. You call yourself gods. But gods don't massacre children. The Valkyrie broke free of the gravity snare. Its cannons roared. Blue streaks of hyper-accelerated slugs cut across the void and slammed into the golden ship. Shields flared, reality shuddered, and for the first time, the Aurelian vessel staggered. On the bridge, silence followed. Then Kane whispered, almost in awe, "We hit them." Sarah's eyes widened. Reed's laughter crackled through the calm ha. "Looks like your gods can bleed after all." But the Aurelians were not silent. Their voice returned, sharper, tinged with fury. "You dare!" The golden ship's spires unfolded like wings, light building into a storm that threatened to swallow the Valkyrie whole. Hayes stood tall, unyielding. He knew what the Aurelians had never believed possible: the illusion of divinity had cracks. Humanity had just driven the first wedge. "Fire again," he ordered. The Valkyrie answered. And across the void, the gods screamed. The Aurelian warship convulsed in the void, its radiant hull fractured where human slugs had torn through layers of shimmering defense. Fragments of molten light drifted like dying stars. For the first time in thousands of years, the so-called gods had been wounded. On the Valkyrie's bridge, silence hung like a shroud. Even the alarms seemed muted, as though the ship itself held its breath. Then Reed's rough voice broke through over calms. "Captain, did we just do that?" Hayes kept his eyes locked on the tactical display, where the golden warship was already reforming, its wounds knitting together like flesh. "Yes, Chief. But don't celebrate yet. They're angry." Marcus Kane's voice was taut, adrenaline sparking in his words. "Angry means afraid." "Or wrathful," Sarah Monroe whispered. Her hands still shook, but her gaze was fixed and unblinking, as if daring the gods to try again. The Aurelians spoke. This time, their voice shook with something unfamiliar: rage. "You defile the eternal. We will show your species the price of insolence." The heavens themselves seemed to open. Dozens of Aurelian vessels materialized, each a floating cathedral of fire and shadow. Their arrival warped space, casting the Valkyrie in an ocean of godlike might. Sarah swallowed hard. "Captain, they're surrounding us." Kane slammed his fist against the console. "Let them. We'll take as many of the bastards as we can with us." Hayes didn't flinch. He turned his gaze across the bridge, meeting each set of eyes. "Listen to me. Fear is their weapon. They want us to kneel before the fight's even begun. But if one ship, one human ship, can wound them, then their eternity isn't as eternal as they claim." The crew straightened, their fear hardening into resolve. Then the Aurelians fired. The void ignited. Lances of white gold energy ripped toward the Valkyrie, carving the black into blinding brilliance. Shields screamed as they buckled under the force. "Shields at 40%. Kane barked. The ship shook, metal groaning like a dying beast. Reed's voice bellowed from engineering, "We can't take this pounding. Hull integrity's falling apart." "Then we don't take it," Hayes snapped. Sarah, evasive maneuvers. Marcus, give them something to choke on. The Valkyrie danced. Engines roared as Sarah pulled the ship into desperate rolls and dives, weaving through storms of divine fire. Marcus unleashed retaliatory volleys, coil slugs and plasma lances cutting against the darkness. For every shot they fired, 10 more came back, but each one that struck an Aurelian ship was a reminder: gods could be wounded. Still, it wasn't enough. The bridge flickered with red light, warnings piling into chaos. Shields collapsing. Kane shouted. "One more hit and we're dust." Hayes gritted his teeth. "Reed, talk to me. Options?" There was a pause. Then Reed's voice came low, almost hesitant. "There's something. buried in the Valkyrie's black systems. A weapon we were never cleared to use. Hayes narrowed his eyes. What kind of weapon? Reed hesitated, then answered, a singularity driver. Prototype. One shot only. Point it at the wrong place, and we take ourselves with it. Point it at the right place, we might tear their gods to pieces. Silence washed over the bridge. Sarah's breath caught. Marcus's lips curled into a grim grin. Hayes asked, why wasn't I told about this? Reed replied, because, Captain, humanity isn't supposed to admit it builds weapons to kill gods. As the Aurelians closed in, the ship shuddered under fresh impacts. Panels sparked. Smoke hissed through the bridge. The voice of the Aurelians returned, drowning the crew's ears. Your defiance ends now. Humanity will kneel. Or humanity will burn. Hayes stood tall, hands gripping the console. His voice cut through the storm, steady as steel. Reed armed the singularity driver. Marcus, plot firing solutions. Sarah, keep us alive long enough to aim. The crew moved. Fear had no place left. Kane worked his console, sweat dripping down his brow. Targeting their flagship, the big one with the spires. If this works, we don't just hurt them. We break their crown. Sarah's knuckles were white over the controls. Just give me 10 seconds. That's all I need. The Valkyrie plunged through fire, shields shattering, hull scorched. Warnings screamed in every ear. Kane's targeting reticle locked, the golden dreadnought looming like a burning mountain in the void. Reed's voice roared through comms, singularity driver primed. Charging sequence unstable, she won't hold long. Then fire, Hayes commanded. The void bent. From the heart of the Valkyrie erupted a beam unlike any other, not light, not plasma, but pure collapse. Reality screamed as the singularity shot cut across the stars, a spear of infinite gravity that tore space itself open. It struck the Aurelian dreadnought. For an instant, the ship resisted. Shields flared, symbols burned, gods screamed. But then, it fractured. The Cathedral of Eternity imploded, dragged into its own collapsing heart. Light twisted, spires shattered, and the dreadnought, a vessel worshipped for 10 millennia, was gone. The shockwave rippled across the fleet. For the first time in recorded memory, an Aurelian god had fallen. On the bridge of the Valkyrie, the crew sat frozen. Sarah's lips trembled, eyes wide with disbelief. Kane laughed, harsh, triumphant. We did it. By every star in the sky, we killed a god. Reed's voice came through, ragged with exhaustion. Captain, the weapon's gone. Burned out. We can't fire it again. Hayes nodded, his eyes never leaving the fading light where the dreadnought had been. His voice was low, resolute. Once was enough. But outside, the Aurelians screamed. Their voices, once serene and omnipotent, were now ragged with fear and rage. This is blasphemy. Mortals cannot kill the eternal. You are abominations. Hayes leaned forward, his tone like iron. No. We're human. And we just proved eternity can bleed. The Aurelians reeled. Their fleets pulled back in chaos, ships flickering uncertainly as whispers of fear rippled across their ranks. For the first time, they knew doubt. But the victory came at a cost. The Valkyrie was broken. Hull breaches scarred its body. Shields were dead. Engines sputtered. On the bridge, fires smoldered, panels cracked, blood streaked across the crew's uniforms. Sarah looked to Hayes, voice hoarse but steady. Captain, we can't survive another round. Hayes nodded grimly. Then we don't wait for one. Plot a course. We take this fight to their throne world. If we fall where they'll never forget us. The crew met his gaze. No one objected. No one hesitated. The Valkyrie, battered but unbroken, turned toward the heart of the Aurelian Empire. And for the first time in 1,000 generations, the gods trembled. The USS Valkyrie limped through the void, battered and scorched, a ship held together more by willpower than steel. Entire decks were dark. Hull plates glowed from burns where Aurelian fire had nearly torn them apart. But she moved still, one lone blade cutting toward the heart of eternity. The Aurelians had never known fear. Until now. Across the galaxy, their empire shuddered. The destruction of the High Dreadnought had rippled through their dominion like a fracture through glass. Worlds once silent whispered rebellion. Their fleets hesitated. Even their own vassals began to question if their gods were nothing more than conquerors in masks. And at the center of it all stood the throne world, a planet wrapped in rings of gold, orbiting a star that burned with unnatural light. It was said the Aurelians had carved their home from the bones of dying suns. It was here they ruled. It was here eternity anchored itself. And it was here the Valkyrie would strike. On the bridge, Captain Jonathan Hayes stood, his uniform torn and stained, but his eyes sharp as iron. "Report," he ordered. Sarah Monroe, her voice raw from exhaustion, spoke from navigation. "Engines stable at 60%. That's as stable as they'll get. We can reach the throne world, but combat maneuvers will be limited." "Limited's good enough," Hayes said. Chief Engineer Daniel Reed coughed through smoke as he patched another panel with his bare hands. "Weapons are crippled. Coil cannons are operational, but only half capacity. Plasma lances are fried. And the singularity driver is gone for good. We shot our one miracle." Marcus Kane grinned, blood drying on his temple. "Then we make do. One miracle was enough to show them they can die." Hayes's gaze swept across his crew. Exhausted. Wounded. But unbroken. This isn't just about survival anymore. If we turn back, they'll hunt us down. If we stop here, the Aurelians will recover, and humanity will be ash. The only way forward is through their throne. No one argued. The throne world grew before them. It was breathtaking. A planet ringed by colossal spires that reached into orbit, each one glowing with symbols that pulsed like living veins. Ships swarmed around it, thousands, tens of thousands, more than humanity had ever seen in one place. An armada fit for gods. And yet, as the Valkyrie emerged, silence fell across the enemy fleet. They watched. They hesitated. Whispers of fear spread like wildfire. The mortals killed a god. The mortals come here. At the heart of it all, a voice thundered through the stars. Unlike the others, it was not cold or mocking. It was vast, resonant, ancient. "So, the mortals arrive. I am the Overlord. Last sovereign of eternity. You have defied my children. You have slain my vessel. And now you dare trespass upon my throne." The crew winced, the sheer force of the voice pressing into their skulls like a tide. Hayes clenched his fists, standing tall against the psychic storm. "This ends today," he said, his words a whisper against the roar, but unshaken. The Overlord's voice rolled like thunder. "Do you think you are different, human? You are dust with fire. You burn bright, then fade. I offer you more. Become as we are. Cast aside mortality. Join eternity. You and your kind could rise as gods." Sarah's voice trembled as she whispered, "He's offering us ascension." Reed spat on the deck. "Parasites dressing themselves up as gods. We saw the truth in your records. You don't ascend. You drain. You feed on every world you conquer." And so, the Overlord replied. "The lambs feed the shepherd. It is the way of power. Kneel, and humanity may shepherd the next age. Refuse, and I will scatter your species to ash." The bridge waited, the weight of eternity pressing on Hayes's shoulders. He thought of Elysium 9, of the charred homes and silenced voices. He thought of his crew, broken yet unyielding. And he thought of the lie the Aurelians had lived for millennia. His voice was steady. Final. Humanity doesn't kneel. The throne world erupted. The Overlord's fleet surged forward, a tidal wave of radiant fire. Thousands of ships unleashed storms of golden lances, enough to erase entire civilizations in a single breath. And into that storm flew the Valkyrie. Sarah pushed the engines to their limit, weaving the crippled ship through impossible fire. Reed screamed over comms as systems failed one by one. Kane fired coil cannons until barrels glowed red, slugs streaking into the void to tear down Aurelian ships one after another. But it was like fighting an ocean with fists. "Captain, we can't hold," Sarah cried. Hayes didn't move. His eyes locked on the throne world itself, on the massive spires channeling power from the planet's core. A thought struck him, cold and sharp as a blade. "Reed, can we overload the reactor?" The engineer froze. "Captain, if we do that, the Valkyrie becomes a bomb. A sun tearing itself apart." Hayes nodded. "Exactly." The bridge fell silent. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "You mean, we won't make it?" Hayes met her gaze, firm but gentle. "No. But if we do this, no one will ever fear them again." Kane slammed his fist against his console, then grinned through the blood. "Hell of a way to go out." Reed's voice cracked. "I'll make it happen, Captain. Give me 10 minutes. "You've got 5, Hayes replied. The Valkyrie plunged toward the throne world. Aurelians swarmed, firing with fury and desperation, but the human ship pressed on, bleeding fire and steel, defying every shot. On the bridge, Hayes opened a final transmission, broadcasting across every channel in the system. His voice carried not just to the Aurelians, but to every species watching, waiting in fear. "This is Captain Jonathan Hayes of the United Terran Fleet. The Aurelians claim to be gods. But gods don't burn children. Gods don't bleed when struck. They are parasites, and parasites can be killed. Remember this day not because we fell, but because eternity fell with us." Reed's voice cut in, reactor at critical. Hayes gave the order. "Do it." The core of the Valkyrie tore itself open. Light erupted, not golden, not divine, but human. A star born of defiance. The explosion consumed the Valkyrie, then ripped outward into the throne world's spires. Energy cascaded into the planet's heart. The throne world screamed. Its surface fractured, rings shattering, spires collapsing. The Overlord's voice thundered across the void, not with rage, but with horror. "No, this is not possible. We are eternal. We..." The scream cut short. The throne world imploded, swallowed by its own unraveling power. The Aurelians' fleets flickered, their voices went silent, and then nothing. The gods were gone. Across the galaxy, silence reigned. Then whispers spread. Whispers of mortals who had slain eternity. Of humans who had refused to kneel. Of a ship called the Valkyrie, and a captain who defied gods. And in every corner of the stars, hope was born. The final transmission of Captain Jonathan Hayes echoed across civilizations, carried like a spark through the void. They were never gods. They can bleed. And if they can bleed, they can fall. The age of gods had ended. The age of humanity had begun.